Hello, this is Crystal Racing to announce the news. Liam Lawson has replaced Daniel Ricciardo for the rest of 2024. Dan Ricciardo has made no secret of the fact that he does not desire a reserve seat in the sport. So I don't know what's next for him, to be honest. He was brought back to VCARB to be assessed as a potential replacement for the underperforming Sergio Perez. But Ricciardo has struggled against Tsunoda and VCARB, desperate to see if they can find a replacement for Perez, who frankly has spent most of this season and most of last season struggling. Still a huge problem for the team, and you have to realise, hello there, Silverback, I hope you're doing well this evening or afternoon where you live. Obviously, thank you for the like, and this is a thing, like, even though I know some people will say, well, oh, thank goodness Ricciardo has left the sport, the thing is, this decision has been based mostly upon the fact that Perez has been struggling really badly for most of this season at Red Bull. And Red Bull, Horner, Marco, you name it, are desperate to assess Lawson to see whether he could be a suitable replacement for Perez, due to the fact that we all know Tsunoda does not appear to have any sort of pathway to the senior Red Bull team at all. Partly due, I think it's probably a mix of the fact that they don't think he's mature enough or mentally strong enough for the second seat at Red Bull. And they don't quite think Tsunoda is quick enough nor consistent enough to be Max Verstappen's teammate. I don't think this decision was so much based upon Ricciardo's performances, even though he was obviously struggling, even though he's obviously been outscored by Tsunoda throughout this season. And whilst I do obviously think it's the right decision in terms of pretty much telling Ricciardo that, frankly, he's surplus to requirements. Hello there to 12 people watching. I hope you're doing well. Yes, you've all heard the news. Lawson is going to replace Ricciardo for the remainder of 2024. And it does look like, I think it will be Lawson being assessed for the senior Red Bull seat, as well as a possible seat at VCARB next year as well, depending on how well things go and how well he compares to Tsunoda. Of course, it does seem as if there's a lot of people thinking that Lawson could be getting promoted to Red Bull next year. Oh yeah, and I forgot, yes, we also have to remember George Russell is being assessed due to the fact that there have been increasing rumours about Max Verstappen's future at the Milton Keynes team. Because, of course, I mean, if Max is going to go to Mercedes, then it's pretty logical to then take on George Russell as his replacement. Obviously, yeah, I think obviously I've heard that pet name being dished out to Dan Ricciardo quite a fair bit now. It's a very sad decline for Ricciardo, but let's be honest, I think I was honestly hoping he'd just leave the sport after 2022, because let's be honest, I always said that leaving Red Bull at the end of 2018 was a huge mistake on Ricciardo's part. Like, there's no other team that's going to realistically produce a car engine package as quick as what Red Bull have had really since 2010. There's only been like two teams able to compete with them, Mercedes and Ferrari. I mean, this is the thing with Ricciardo, like, he keeps talking about how he wants to be in a winning car, how he wants to be at the front of the field fighting for championships, but it's like, you know, you walked away from that chance in 2018, and he did, you know, after the Baku crash. I think obviously Ricciardo got very upset by the fact that the team didn't take his side in the accident between himself and Verstappen, and I know, obviously, to say that he could have been 2021 world champion is a bit far-fetched. I understand what people think when I say that, but I'm thinking of seasons like 2016 when Rosberg became champion, 2009 Button when Button did it, 97 when Villeneuve won the championship, 99 when Irvine came within 3 points of beating Hakkinen, and then, of course, Massa in 2008, where, had it not been with Timo Glock, Massa could have been a champion. I'm just saying that you never know with F1. Like, you don't necessarily need to be the best nor the fastest driver to become a champion. And the thing with Ricciardo is that we all know that 6 out of his 8 wins came from someone having problems in front of him. Like, he wasn't necessarily the fastest driver on the day. He wasn't necessarily the most impressive driver when he won most of his races. But he always had a nose for sniffing out danger and always capitalizing upon other people's problems and taking advantage of strong pit strategies by his Red Bull team. I mean, I know you're thinking there was no chance of that, but you have to realise Max obviously had an intense championship fight with Hamilton in 2021, where, of course, they came to blows at Silverstone. Max got hit by Bottas at Hungary. Max collided with Hamilton again at Monza. And then, of course, they were both out of position for both Russia and Turkey on the grid. So you never know, like, crazier things have happened. But as for Liam Lawson, I think this is obviously a well-deserved return to Formula One. I know there's been some some critics of Liam Lawson saying, oh, he never won a race in Formula 2, but I think he dominated Formula 3. He nearly won the DTM Championship in Germany. And he almost won the Super Formula Series in Japan. So for me, I mean, I think I don't think you quite understand how much Ricciardo struggled with McLaren that year. Like, the brake system, the steering, just simply he couldn't get his head around it. And I think when he realised how big the gap between himself and Norris was, I think mentally he began to sort of, I don't know, begin to accept his fate as the number 2 driver at McLaren. I mean, Verstappen better than Verstappen. I mean, maybe Max is better than Yoss, yeah, but no more Smile Cardo. Sad end, isn't it? But in a way, I think Ricciardo should have bit the bullet after he left McLaren and went to go and really he should have gone to what's the IndyCar and WEC. But of course, Ricciardo keeps coming out with things like, I'm scared of the ovals at Indy. I mean, it's like, I mean, obviously, this is a pro Ricciardo, and I think a lot of people have obviously been talking about him being a mercenary, and it does make you wonder, like, is Ricciardo's heart in motor racing in general? Because it's like, if he really wanted to win Le Mans and go and win Indy, he would have gone and left F1 after 22 and got his head down and said, right, I'm going to chase Indy, and I'm going to chase Le Mans, and I'm going to chase that Triple Crown and upstage Fernando Alonso. The opportunity was there because obviously 2 years ago, he was still only 33 years old. He was still young enough to chase a become only the second man after Graham Hill to win the Triple Crown of Motorsport, having obviously won Monaco in 2018. Herbert got his way, yeah, I think obviously. The thing is, I also said that Ricciardo was only re-signed by Red Bull in order to be a corporate shill for Visa and the Cash App sponsors they received, as well as Olin, who they stole that sponsor away from Sauber, when, of course, Robert Kubica retired from Formula One along with Kimi at the end of 2021. I don't know. Oh, yeah, Motorsport 101 with Andre Harrison. I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about, mate. I think you need to explain in the comments what you're talking about. But Liam Lawson, I think, honestly, should have been given a chance to have the full season this year. I think he's going to have a 6-race shootout to prove whether he's good enough to at least drive for VCARB next year. And if it all goes fantastically well and he completely destroys Tsunoda, he could be getting a promotion to the Red Bull senior squad after what would only be 11 races at a junior team, which would be an even faster and even more meteoric rise than Alex Albon promotion to Red Bull in 2019, which seems like an absolute day and age ago. I mean, obviously, yeah, I know Olin stayed on board for 2022, but let's be honest, I think I think Kubica did do another year of being a reserve driver, but by that point, he was just basically surplus to requirement. So obviously, once he left the sport full time after 2022, when he decided he didn't want to be a reserve driver either, off the sports car, he's gone, and he's done pretty well in sports car. Like, if Kubica can do it, then why can Ricciardo not do it? Lawson, I mean, I really do hope we see Lawson do well because, let's be honest, I am kind of getting fed up of seeing Perez stink out the place at Red Bull. Like, Perez is a very solid pair of hands in the midfield, like we saw when he was at Force India, but nothing has ever made me sit there and think, oh yeah, Sergio Perez is going to be a world champion. Like, I can remember writing in old blog pages back in like 2015 just saying, why does Perez have so many fans, even outside of Mexico? Like, I understand, obviously, in Mexico why he has fans, because Mexico hasn't really had many F1 drivers, and I think the best driver before Perez was obviously Pedro Rodriguez in the late 1960s, driving for Ferrari and BRM and maybe even McLaren, where he won a couple of races in his career. I mean, 2014, well, a long time ago. I mean, Brexit had not happened yet, surprisingly enough. Which country and year was it that Toro Rosso did a full-time driver swap? 2016, when Kvyat got dropped after Russia for crashing into Vettel and replaced him with Max Verstappen. Toro Rosso and Red Bull have done so many driver swaps. Like, I mean, at least Ferrari remain committed to the drivers they have. Like, I think Ferrari, on the contrary, very rarely do many driver changes over the years. Oh yeah, Barack Obama was still in charge. Now, that is a long time ago. Hamilton and Rosberg fought for the championship. Well, it did go to the final race, by the way. So yeah, it was an actual championship fight, despite the fact, obviously, Rosberg's car went kerplunk in the final race, and he struggled on towards the end just because he wanted to show the fans and his team that he wasn't going to just throw in the towel just because he's got a car problem. 2017, Sainz went to Renault and Kvyat was sacked after Singapore, but of course he came back for America because of Gasly's Super Formula obligations in Japan, where of course the race ended up being cancelled because of a typhoon that never even came. So yeah, quite funny that. And Gasly ended up finishing second in the Japanese Super Formula Series. So thank you very much, Will F1. Hello there, John Cartier, Say Regara, all the usual crew once again. Thank you for supporting the channel. Of course, I also need to talk about other drivers. Franco Colapinto. Now, obviously, Williams are contracted to have Carlos Sainz and Alex Albon at the team for 2025, but Colapinto has been making a name for himself, and I have to say, I don't just think it's Albon who's looking at him. I think Red Bull could be looking at Colapinto. Like, don't be surprised if Red Bull go running after Colapinto. Like, I mean, if Perez does get the boot from the senior Red Bull squad at the end of this year, do not be surprised to see Colapinto get a move to VCARB for next year. Oh, poor old Brendan Hartley. I mean, yeah, I know Brendan Hartley was not F1 material, but you have to realise, obviously, Brendan Hartley had been like a Red Bull junior driver for basically a decade, right up until his move at Toro Rosso, when he was already like nearly 28 years old when he joined what was then called Toro Rosso. And then, of course, Pierre Gasly absolutely destroyed him. So it was, I mean, let's be honest, Hartley only got a promotion to the junior team because they just had no one else at that point. Like, Kvyat desperately needed a rest from the sport. Oh yeah, Red Bull also kicked out Hartley when he was 21 years old, I think. I don't know. I think he did a couple of GP2 races in 2012 when he was like 23 years old, and I think he still had a Red Bull logo on his helmet. But I think after that, I think he then walked off to sports car racing to race for Porsche, where, yeah, I think it was actually 23 when he left the Red Bull Junior program. only to then return because obviously Red Bull had run out of drivers to sack. So obviously swings and roundabouts there, but I have to say, obviously, Hartley did struggle against some of the other Red Bull junior drivers. Ricciardo, Biemi, and Alguersuari were all more successful than him in the junior series. It's a funny one. I think obviously sometimes, like, I know Mark Webber carried a Red Bull logo on his helmet when he went to sports car racing because I think it was more personal sponsorship reasons, because I know Red Bull do also do a bit of personal sponsorship for drivers like, I think that guy named, I can't remember, Adam something in a British touring car, like, I keep forgetting his name, I think. Anyway, I keep thinking it's Adam Johnson, but then I keep getting his name muddled up with an ex-footballer who ended up going to prison for some very bad deeds. Yeah, my memory kind of has betrayed me in terms of I don't know what that sound was. Apologise for that. Colapinto has been getting backing for Lionel Messi. Lionel Messi is now been chipping in. Wow. So he's gone from his dad sending their family home in Argentina just so he can have his drive in Europe funded for a season to getting money from Lionel Messi. That is just unbelievable. Meteoric rise by the young Argentine driver, just 21 years old. I think he's only actually had one junior title in, was it Spanish Formula 4, but consistently winning races and podiums in Formula 2 and Formula 3. Okay, he's never won any of those championships at that level, but he has been very impressive, and he's really put Alex Albon on his backside. Like, Alex Albon, I think, has just been completely exposed, to be honest. Like, I like Alex Albon, but I think deep down, I've always been quite realistic about what Alex Albon really is at best. A lower midfield driver. There's nothing to be ashamed of in terms of Albon's career. And last year, I think Alex Albon arguably actually outperformed himself at his actual, like, true driving level. So, in a sense, this season was kind of returned to normal for Alex, and now that Williams have woken up, smelt the coffee, and realised Logan Sargent was just a seat hogger at best, they brought Colapinto in, and Colapinto has not only done the job of keeping the car on the road, he's just been ridiculously quick. And that overtaking move at the start where he leaped past 3 cars was absolutely tremendous. Fantastic. Yeah, I think there are a few crazy Albon fans out there who need to kind of be a bit more realistic, because he is now already 28 years old. He's not exactly young by modern F1 standards, I'm afraid. I mean, he made his debut when he was 23, so, I mean, and that itself is not very promising, because if a driver stays in the junior series for too long, like I said with Zhou Guan Yu yesterday, then that's a sign they're not actually very special, because usually a young driver gets promoted within like 3 or 4 or 5 years maximum of doing junior racing to Formula 1. Yeah, let's not talk about Adam Johnson. I was trying to talk about a British touring car driver who I think I think it's also called Adam. I think, is it Adam Tordoff or is it Sam Tordoff? I can't remember, but yeah. I'm just getting all muddled up. Alonso got 5th. Oh yeah, this grid penalties with McLaren Honda. Yeah, Alonso fans having nightmares all over again. GP2 engine, GP2. Anyway. Yeah, Biemi is a reserve driver of Red Bull. Like, how can I forget? How on earth are we not talking about Sebastian Biemi? Like, when's he coming back to Red Bull? When's he going to get a return to the junior team? But yeah, I kid. Of course, he's just there to be their test driver these days. He's been a very reliable test driver over the years. But, we cannot rule out Colapinto getting a promotion, getting signed up by Red Bull, because we all know Red Bull will sign anyone that is available. They did it with Nick de Vries last year, and I'm definitely sure Christian Horner and Herbert Marko especially has definitely has sent a couple of text messages to the young Argentine driver. I kid, Will. Of course, I know BM is not coming to Formula One. I mean, I did say I was joking, but I said BM could be coming back to Formula One. Yes, I know what he is. He's just a test driver, and mostly a sports car driver for Toyota, and of course a Formula E driver, and he's done very well at both of them. So yeah. Obviously, I just saw a comment underneath a Ricciardo Lawson video, and someone said, "Oh, we've been talking about all these drivers, Ricciardo, Lawson, Tsunoda, and co, but yet we all forgot Biemi is still hanging around a garage." Oh dear, yeah, they're racing you too hard, Alex, aren't they? And I have to say this, Alex Albon needs to watch his back for Carlos Sainz next year, because if he's not careful, then I think Williams might consider dropping him at the end of next year, or maybe after 2026, if they have a young hotshot in their own academy coming up. BME hasn't won a race in Formula E since 2019. Yeah, well, I mean, I think he's won a championship there, so it's not that bad if you think about it. He's not done too badly. I think he's won Le Mans 24 hours, won a couple of wet championships. Yeah, he's done pretty well. Like, Newgarden washed. Oh, Newgarden. Well, he won the Indy 500 this year, so that's not too bad. But Colapinto cannot be ignored in this discussion, because I know many people are linking him to a drive at Sauber. But what about VCARB? Like, VCARB, I mean, they surely must be assessing Colapinto at this point. And before we know, before we know, if Red Bull, for whatever reason, lose Max Verstappen, and for some reason they can't get George Russell to replace him, by 2026, we could have a partnership of Colapinto and Lawson at the senior Red Bull squad with their new Ford engines. It sounds far-fetched, and it would probably mean that they would have a driver lineup with an average age of something like 23 years old, which would be remarkably young, even by Red Bull standards. But Adam Jones, I don't know. I think he drives like a Toyota or something, and his dad owns the team. I don't know. I'm so confused now. I think it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's British touring car racing. Like, I've watched British tour. I don't really watch touring car racing much these days, but it's just the name that it's just like I saw a Red Bull logo on the side of its helmet. It was just something that made me feel curious. I mean, we all know Red Bull sponsor loads of athletes in whatever category it is: football, skiing, mountain biking, downhill skiing, jumping off cliffs, bungee jumping. Yeah, so basically, but there's so many. I mean, NASCAR drivers. I know Scott Speed carried his Red Bull logo with him when he went to NASCAR racing. Nick Cassidy. I don't even know what the hell Nick Cassidy was doing carrying Red Bull logos, but of course, I think if you're a junior driver, it's always good to have a bit of personal sponsorship, because obviously, if you're committing yourself to achieving the best you can in motor racing, you don't get paid like much money or any money when you're racing Formula 2 or Formula 3. It's literally like an academy keeping you alive, or your parents. So, well, he has a good relationship with Red Bull. Why not carry on taking their money? Like, there's no talk of him going to Formula One, so it's not like anyone's going to be like creating headlines out of it. And Red Bull like to have their logos plastered pretty much everywhere that's available these days. You know, even on carpet laundry mats, you'll find Red Bull logos. Or like on the side of supermarkets, you'll probably just find like a plastic Red Bull can at the side, where, you know, you're walking into Sainsbury's and there's this vending machine shaped like a Red Bull can, painted in silver and light blue. Red Bull are like the modern day Marlboro, like, 2005 Marlboro, West, Benson and Hedges, all were banned by the European Union from doing sponsorships around Europe. And because of that, all the teams had to find alternative sponsorship. And conveniently, Red Bull not only not only bought Ford's team from them and renamed Jaguar as Red Bull Racing, but of course, it's so hard to really get away from those Red Bull logos ever since for basically now, 25 years? Antonio Felix Acosta, Vern got rid of this Red Bull. Yeah, I think Jean-Eric Vergne was very bitter about how he got booted out by Toro Rosso because, I think he just thought, I did the bad job and I outscored Ricciardo, I outscored Kvyat, but the problem with Jean-Eric Vergne was that his qualifying was absolutely garbage. Like, yeah, he was a solid race driver, but I think, like I said yesterday, if you can't qualify well with modern F1, you are screwed. You are really screwed. And of course, we all know that was a problem for both Gasly and Albon when they got promoted to the senior Red Bull squad. Red Bull Mini Coopers. Oh my word, I want to puke. Someone passed me the sick bucket. A Red Bull Mini Cooper, like, this is what I said, like, the problem with Red Bull is that they are the new Marlboro, but the problem is, like, blue and silver just looks garish compared to red and white. Like, apparently, like, the reason why so many race circuits, like, drain covers are all painted red and white is due to the fact that apparently back in the day, Marlboro used to sponsor drain covers around racetracks, which is not a joke, by the way. And of course, they used to sponsor McLaren and Ferrari very heavily since. With Marlboro, like, to be honest, Marlboro don't really need to do F1 sponsorship anymore because, every time you look at Ferrari, you'll always sit there and be reminded of the times when they used to sponsor Michael Schumacher and when he was winning all the time. And of course, all the red and white drain covers you see at racetracks. And yeah, I think, John clearly wasn't very happy with how his time at Toro Rosso went. But I have to say, I personally would like to see Lawson get promoted to the senior Red Bull team if he does well and he actually beats Tsunoda, because let's face it, I think we all have had enough of seeing Sergio Perez in that Red Bull seat. 4 years is more than enough evidence, and he's not improved in 18 months. And Colapinto, I think obviously he would like to, it'd be great to see him drive for Sauber, but then of course, Sauber and Audi, I think, were also quite keen to have some experience in the team, and they do have their own junior drivers like Pourchaire and Zane Maloney to pick from if they want to go after them. And for all we know, they could be signing Daniel Ricciardo for their second seat next year. You never know. I know it sounds like, oh my God, really? Dan Ricciardo at Sauber? But the thing with Ricciardo is that he doesn't seem to be particularly keen on doing IndyCar racing. We've not really heard any serious rumours of Ricciardo trying to pursue a Le Mans seat, which obviously would enable him to do the Triple Crown of Motorsport conquest. And I've still not really heard any, serious rumours of Ricciardo moving to a NASCAR team. So, in spite of Ricciardo talking about doing all these other series, he still seems to be very attached to Formula One. Oh, yeah, I know a few years back, there was that Mission Winnow sponsorship by Marlboro for Ferrari. But of course, it got banned for being subliminal sponsorship. So, I think Kimi Raikkonen won the US Grand Prix using Mission Winnow painted over his engine cover. Very iconic, but problem is the FIA ruled it as basically being a subliminal sponsorship with the M and the W looking like the old M sign for Marlboro. Bit ridiculous. And I know a few years back when Kimi used to drive for Lotus with the black and gold pinstripe colour scheme, there were FIA members considering prohibiting Lotus from running that what looked like Lotus's old John Player's Special cigarette sponsorship scheme from back in the 70s and 80s. But of course, it never happened because obviously I don't even think Imperial Tobacco actually exists as a company anymore because they're so old school. Better Tomorrow, yeah, I think obviously, I don't know. I think Philip Morris have now had created a partnership with McLaren, so they have Better Tomorrow on their nose cone. But I think because obviously Mission Winner got banned, like I think McLaren have deliberately made a Better Tomorrow logo really for their car, so you have to really go up in person and look at the logo really close up to see the logo, or hope for the cameraman to zoom in onto the logo when they're getting pushed back into the garage. I'd still rather have Ricciardo than Bottas. I don't know, it's a really interesting one. I think Bottas has gone on record saying that if he only gets offered a 1-year contract, then he would consider rejecting it because he just sees it as a waste of time, which, fair enough. But, I mean, with Sauber, I really don't know if they're going to get in that second seat, because if Colapinto does decide to go to VCARB or RB or Team Faenza, Team Minardi 2.0, whatever they call themselves in the future, Visa, let's gamble all my money away, Cash App. I mean, there could still be at least 1 or 2 seats open on the grid. I know a lot of teams have been trying to get their driver transfer business done ASAP, in contrast to the past, because of course F1 teams, just like football teams, do not want to be wasting their time with driver transfers and dealing with the contracts and having to deal with their agents and all the people that like to annoy them. I mean, it is a bit of an interest. It does seem a bit remarkably late that we've still got up to 2 seats up for question, or maybe 3 if you include a Red Bull seat with Perez. Next season, there'll be a huge headache for McLaren when it comes to sponsor placements. Yeah, McLaren not only are they signing up all the best engineers on the grid, I think they've got more sponsorships than everyone else, which is sharp contrast to where they were 10 years ago, where I think the 2014 and 2015 and 16 McLarens had a lot of blank spaces on those cars. Like him or hate him, Zach Brown knows how to do business networks with people. He's very good at getting sponsorship, bringing attention to the team. I mean, it's very much in sharp contrast to how Ron Dennis ran things, in that Ron Dennis didn't really like to waste times with sponsors. He always came out with the most shortest answers, and it made the team very cold and clinical. But I mean, with Zach Brown, it's a complete opposite mentality. I mean, the 2014 McLaren looked like a baby in that. There was just absolutely plain, no features, nothing interesting. It just looked like Mercedes' car, but if you took the green shading away from the Petronas sponsorship logo, that's what the McLaren looked like. And it was only when they got in their deal with Honda next year that they then replaced the silver with a plain black colour, because they realised it looked too much like the Mercedes and they didn't want to. And obviously with McLaren ending their Mercedes partnership for the next 6 years or so, they didn't want to be associated with the German company. Yeah, I think obviously McLaren tried to differentiate their car with, I don't know, a couple of yellow sap logos, which is fair enough, but from a distance, it still looked like another. It looked way too similar to Mercedes, which is interesting to say, because of course Mercedes last weekend at Singapore decided to paint their nose cone in green, which, funnily enough, made it look a bit similar to the Aston Martin, which made me a bit wrong. I think the last few years of Ron Dennis was a bit of a problem at McLaren because I think Ron Dennis was clearly out of touch with like the direction the sport was heading in, with Bernie Ecclestone setting up to Liberty Media, and just everything about McLaren looks so boring and dull, to be honest. Like, I mean, it's sort of a marketing fail because obviously they had Fernando Alonso on board, and with Alonso being one of the best drivers on the grid, like, how the hell can you not exploit the opportunity to like sell more sponsorship space in your car when you have a top driver like that? Yeah, I know Ron Dennis took a step back after 2007, but he was still involved in the team. I think obviously he gave more control to Martin Whitmarsh, but I think around 2014 he came back because I think they got rid of Whitmarsh, and he tried to arrest the decline of McLaren around that time, where they tried to make the Honda deal work, but it failed. And then, of course, with Zach Brown knocking on the door towards the end of 2016, he took control, and Ron was just had enough. I think the struggles of Honda's return, I think, really took a toll on Ron, and he decided, I've had enough. I mean, I think most of us have surely got to rate Colapinto ID because 3 races into his F1 career, he has just been superb. And wherever he drives, whoever wants him on the grid next season, I'm sure he will get a seat because at this point, I think it's pretty clear it's time for the likes of Magnussen, Bottas, and Ricciardo to leave the sport and possibly take Perez with them if Perez gets found. Well, let's face it, if Lawson does well in the next 6 races and Perez shows absolutely no improvement. Yeah, but the thing with Tag Heuer is that they were winning. That the reason why Red Bull were able to take over the Tag Heuer partnership is because Tag Heuer became they became that Red Bull decided to slap the Tag Heuer logo on the Renault engines due to Red Bull falling out with Renault due to certain comments made at the start of 2015 due to the fact that obviously Renault's new hybrid turbo engines were found to be miles beyond Mercedes's V6s, and obviously Renault were not happy with the bad PR, so obviously Red Bull needed, well, we'll see. I think Tag Heuer also did a bit of work in terms of doing like telemetry data and tracking how well the Renault engines were working. So in a sense, I think Tag Heuer did a bit of like maintenance work for Red Bull as well as the sponsorships. Johnny Walker, Golf Air. These are all very Ron Dennis style type of sponsorships, and I think with this sort of increasing opposition to like tobacco sponsorships, which have been followed on by alcohol, gambling, and crypto sponsorships, obviously, I think Zach Brown and Randy Singh have tried to make McLaren more PR friendly ever since the departure of the big Ron. And the thing with Liam Lawson is obviously he doesn't need to necessarily show himself as like a competitor to Max Verstappen if obviously he gets a Red Bull seat, but just frankly an improvement upon what Sergio Perez has been doing for the past 2 years. That's it. Richard Mille. Oh, right. McLaren got Richard Mille. Yeah, I know Richard Mille was quite popular with the drivers. Like, he's made loads of watches for the drivers like Charles Leclerc. I think Richard Mille sponsored Charles Leclerc in his junior journey, and I think he's also made watches for people like Kimi Räikkönen and Jenson Button and a few others I could name. I mean, all in all, I think obviously Tag Heuer gave Porsche better watches than Red Bull. Whoa, whoa. Well, I suppose even Tag Heuer got annoyed with the antics of some people at Red Bull. I think the thing with Red Bull is that I think Red Bull are definitely now having to look at their junior drivers because Perez is struggling, Max Verstappen sounds like he wants to leave the team because obviously this year has been such a decline in performance. And frankly, obviously, I think hiring Lawson and potentially hiring Colapinto is going to be on the cards today, because come 2026, I think Red Bull could have a completely different partnership to what they have now. Let's face it, Perez is no longer a long-term option of any sort. If Lawson's coming in next year and Verstappen leaves, then I think Colapinto would probably be like a very handy replacement for Verstappen. I mean, I know obviously there's been some that have talked about George Russell potentially joining Red Bull in 26, but you never know what could happen with Lewis Hamilton at Ferrari, or maybe Alonso and Stroll, Aston Martin. Who knows what might happen with McLaren's partnership of Norris and Piastri? Like, McLaren might be keen to have George Russell. Like, I know George Russell can be inconsistent, but I do think a lot of teams do rate George Russell. It's just that Mercedes haven't necessarily given him the most consistent car over the past 3 years to show his talent. And the fact, of course, he is driving against Lewis Hamilton. So, it's always going to be back and forth in terms of how well Russell's going to do. Omega personally sponsored Schumacher. Yeah. I don't know. I forgot about that. I know Schumacher had a lot of his own personal sponsors, like, was it Deutsche Bank? I think he also had like the same sponsor as what Nico Hulkenberg's had. Another bunch of German companies. I keep forgetting their names because obviously they're German, so I can't pronounce them very well. What else is there? Not Deutsche Bank. No, I keep forgetting. Was it Dacker? I can't remember, but yeah, Derker. Yeah, thank you. Dekra. Yeah, thank you. That's the one. That is the one. Dekra. Yeah. Obviously, I don't really spend that much time being that particularly concerned with Nico Hulkenberg, so yeah, my memory is a bit faded. And obviously, the last time Schumacher was like one of the leading lights in the field was back in 2006. I know he came back for 3 years at Mercedes, but that itself feels like a long time ago for me, because I know it's now been a decade since the skiing accident, but all the best to whatever Michael Schumacher is up to right now, because personally, I mean, that's his private life. But Red Bull, I think, obviously, they're going to have Ford engines in 2026. They're going to have to try and prepare for life after Adrian Newey. And, of course, they've lost all their big engineers and team strategists like Jonathan Wheatley, Hannah Schmidt, Newey, Will Courtney, and a few other names. And I think, this is why Daniel Ricciardo has been forced to leave. And I think Sergio Perez is probably going to have his head on a chopping block soon, because he's 34 years old. He's not getting any younger. He's definitely not getting any faster. So he surely has to be considered to have his head on a chopping block. And of course, being Mexican, he can always go to IndyCar racing and go back to North America. Well, I keep seeing news stories about Hannah Schmidt leaving Red Bull, because apparently I don't know what's going on at Red Bull. Speaking of Tag Heuer, a decade of Rolex is coming to an end. Tag Heuer's parent company, LVMH, is interested in F1. Oh, right. So, wait. Okay, Rolex has obviously been sponsoring F1 races. I don't know what's going on with Hannah Schmidt, but I do keep seeing posts on Twitter about Hannah Schmidt leaving the team, because Jonathan Wheatley has definitely departed the team. Will Courtney's gone with Adrian Newey. It does seem as if, like, Christian Horner is doing everything he can to avoid being sacked by Red Bull, but instead, Red Bull are now sacrificing almost everyone else in the team for the sake of protecting Horner, which is, I have to say, I mean, that's a very dangerous strategy to play, because let's be honest, he's just a team principal. He's just there to make sure he gets the right people in the right places, signs the right contracts. And having lost so many important people in such a short space of time with a car declining in the way it is so dramatically, which, yes, I know partly due to the budget cap and the performance quota that's been put in place where, like, they have less wind tunnel time and less development time than everyone else because of their success over the last 3 years. I mean, I do wonder how well Red Bull can carry on doing well because Adrian Newey is just an expert at whatever he does. Like, you can tell him, you can restrict him to working 20 days a year, and I think those 20 days a year will be far more productive if you can then compare to if you like gave another technical director only like 25 days a year to work for the team, for example. Well, this is what I read on the BBC website that Will Courtney's left. Apparently saying he's gone to McLaren. Will Courtney's gone to McLaren. McLaren is interested in GP. Oh, right. Max's engineer. Yeah. Oh, wow. GP could be departing. Oh, my goodness me. Red Bull are literally collapsing like a deck of dominoes right now. Yeah, Red Bull, I think this is why Red Bull are going after the youngsters out. This is why Liam Lawson's got a probation period at VCARB coming up. And I think like if Red Bull can get their best representatives to persuade Colapinto to join VCARB, I think they are preparing for 2026 and beyond because let's face it, Max doesn't seem like he wants to stay around for any beyond 2025 with Mercedes. So if he can strike a deal with Mercedes and replace Russell and become Kimi Antonelli's teammate. And Perez is obviously not performing anywhere near close to requirements. And, you know, there's only so much the sponsorship money he carries over from Mexico can really take him because Red Bull are obviously there in F1 to win. They're not just there to be an advertising company like. It's not like, you know, they're like BMW Sauber back in like 2008 where like once Robert Kubica won the Canadian Grand Prix, they just stopped spending money on the 2008 car and then when they realised the 2009 car was rubbish, they just threw in the towel and sold the team back to Peter Sauber. So, yeah, I think obviously this is not like, I mean, Ricciardo was obviously only brought back to see if he could be assessed as being like a good replacement for Perez and obviously to attract a bit of PR publicity back to the Red Bull team and obviously bring Visa and Cash App as personal sponsors. Oh yeah, GP did stay at Red Bull because obviously of the deal he did with Horner, but I don't think GP is particularly impressed by the decline in performance, just like Max, Hannah Schmidt, Wheatley, Courtney, Newey, like everyone. I think Christian Horner is becoming a liability at Red Bull now. Like, I think he's really lost. He's basically the Formula One equivalent of losing the dressing room in football. Like, people do not like working with Christian Horner. He is like, I think there's some people who have been coming out with stories saying like, it's like working with a tyrant when it comes to talking about Christian Horner. Yeah, I mean, this is a thing. Like, what's the point? I mean, GP. Let's face it. I think GP used to be Danny Kvyat's engineer, and obviously, GP used to be the guy who had to work with all the number 2 drivers. So obviously, once he got Max as a driver, he's been enjoying a lot of success since for the past 8 years. So I think if Max leaves, then he's pretty much accomplished everything he's ever wanted to do at Red Bull, and I don't think it's very likely GP will ever become team principal at Red Bull unless something dramatic happens and unless, I don't know, Red Bull GmbH rates him as like a potential team principal. Hannah Schmidt might not leave because she might take Courtney's position. Yeah, but I don't know, mate. Like, I'm sure there's other teams on the grid who want Hannah Schmidt though, so you can never be certain if she stays. And I think the start of 2025 is going to be so crucial for Red Bull because if the car is not working well at the start of next season, then I think they're going to lose Max Verstappen for good, and that's just going to force Red Bull into some real major changes all over the team. Like, no more Adrian Newey, no more Jonathan Wheatley, no more Will Courtney, and maybe a couple of other engineers will depart the team, because every great empire declines and they all fall apart. You know, Mercedes haven't been very successful for the past 3 years, having only had, I don't know, 4 race wins since the start of 2022. And funnily enough, 2023 made Mercedes only the second team in Formula One history to be able to clinch second place in the Constructors' Championship without winning a race, of course. The last time another team did it was back in 2004 when British American Racing Honda, otherwise known as BAR Honda, with Jenson Button and Takuma Sato, did the same feat. But of course, funnily enough, they were the same team based in the same location in Brackley, because of course Mercedes took over the whole old BAR Honda / Ross Brawn operations in 2010. Mazepin and Max Verstappen for Haas. Oh, what a tasty lineup that would be. The ultimate GOAT lineup. I'm sure you're talking about Jos Verstappen. Yeah, Jos Verstappen and Mazepin would have a great boxing match at the same time. Proper boxing match, yeah. It's only been 9 votes for who will Lawson and Colapinto drive for in 2025. And God, it seems a bit divided now, because there's some people who just think that they don't know what I mean, they just sit there and think that there could be a couple of people in the votes think there could be someone else other than Lawson and Colapinto at VCARB and Sauber next year. But yet no one has actually commented where the alternative drivers or alternative teams could be. And as for Yuki Tsunoda, like, I don't know what the hell is going to happen to him in 2025. I think I'm going to have to do a separate video for him, because I think I did a video saying that I thought Yuki Tsunoda could be moving to Aston Martin, but the golden child keeps surviving for no inexplicable reason, because his dad refuses to wake up from his weird wet dream where he thinks Lance Stroll is going to destroy everyone, even though his son has only picked up 3 podiums in 8 years of Formula One. It's just pure delusion at this point, because let's face it, Yuki Tsunoda would definitely be an upgrade on Lance Stroll. I am 100% certain of it. Even if Yuki himself is not a perfect driver by any stretch of the imagination, there's no way Yuki would do worse than Lance. I am 150% certain he would be a better teammate for Fernando Alonso. And if Fernando Alonso did well with Yuki Tsunoda as a teammate, I would actually be more willing to give Fernando Alonso praise for his performance, because I'd be like, yeah, Yuki Tsunoda is a serious driver compared to Lance. My speculation for Mercedes, if they go downwards more, Total will share his share to Jim Radcliffe. Yeah, absolutely. Like, I think Mercedes themselves have also served their purpose in terms of winning championships, like making bank on the Hamilton name. What else is there for them to achieve? Like, I mean, Jim Radcliffe, on the other hand, wants to, like, try and rescue Man United. And then, of course, he'll see it as basically God's mission to say, relaunch Mercedes as a top F1 team again. Oh, yeah, BMW Sauber second after McLaren. Oh, yeah, I forgot. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I forgot about that. It didn't really feel like they finished second, though, because in my head it's like, well, Ferrari scored 214 points with Kimi and Bottas points combined, and BMW scored only like 83 points, so it just feels, or 104 points, I can't remember, but it just felt like BMW. I mean, BMW were never in competition to fight for the constructors' title. Isn't Radcliffe one of the reasons Lewis is leaving Mercedes? I don't know. I have no idea. Oh, yeah, thank you for reminding me, Will. Yeah, absolutely, yeah. McLaren actually had 13 points taken. Not 13. No, they had 15 points removed from their 218 points total because of obviously the driving, what happened in qualifying between Hamilton and Alonso at Hungary, where also infamously stayed in his pit stall for about 10 seconds in order to stop Lewis Hamilton from doing a final qualifying lap. And, well, even if they never got disqualified from the championship, McLaren would have actually ended the season with 203 points because obviously the 15 points were deducted from their points total before their official disqualification. My God, Lord, please, I don't know what the hell that would be like. Red Bull, Gasly, Ricciardo. Oh, I pray to God Gasly destroys Ricciardo if that ever happens, but I think we all know Ricciardo is surely done with Formula One. Like, unless Sauber are really desperate to have Ricciardo because for some reason they don't rate Porsche and they can't get their hands on Colapinto, and maybe, I don't know, they don't want Bortoleto. I think, oh yeah, how can I forget Bortoleto? Gabriel Bortoleto, I think, is actually in the shout of a seat in F1. How could I forget about him? I think he could well be the reason. If Colapinto goes to VCARB, then Bortoleto will have an open shot at that Sauber seat. How can I forget about Gabriel Bortoleto? I am so sorry about forgetting his name. I mean, yeah, shall we do one more poll? I think I might take it into tomorrow. Gabriel Bortoleto. I remember Peter Brooks saying Canada, Hungary, and Fuji was the races that Alonso lost the 2007 championship. Yeah, I think that was the races he lost the championship. That's absolutely correct. Those were the 3 races that costed Alonso what would have been a 3rd consecutive championship win. And he would have done that with 2 different teams, mind you. So the weirdest thing with Alonso, if luck had gone his way, he could have won 4 or 5 championships with 3 teams. So, oh yeah, Hamilton. Yeah, well, Hamilton's also had his own mishaps. I think, to be honest, I think Hamilton. Well, I don't know how you can look at it, but I think it was 2 races that costed Lewis Hamilton the 2010 title, which was Monza and Singapore when he collided with Massa and Webber. I mean, obviously, there were quite a few schoolboy errors in 2021 and 2016. How can we forget? I don't know what it is with him. Oh, yeah, and I could remember during the safety car restart at Baku, he said, "This is a marathon, not a sprint." Oh yeah, Lewis. And then he went and overshot the first corner, which was absolutely hilarious to say the least. When he did I call it a Brake Magic Grand Prix? I can't even remember. Did I mispronounce the word? I don't know what the hell I was talking about back then. Brake Magic Grand Prix. That's hilarious. I've already had a vote for Gabriel Bortoleto, and it doesn't seem like people think he'll be in the sport next year. The first vote, I'm afraid. I kind of feel a bit sorry, but I will feel sorry for Bortoleto if Ricciardo does get a seat at Sauber next year, because truth be told, that would sum up the whole mentality amongst a lot of the team bosses in the series right now, in that they would prefer to be cautious and safe with their driver options instead of chasing the next big thing in the sport, which, let's be honest, I think Ricciardo, Magnussen and Bottas have definitely surely should be heading for the old age pensioners home and spending a bit of time with me and Seb down there, because, you know, they're getting a bit lonely. I mean, I think the likes of Nigel Mansell are actually on the verge of now being sent to a real old person's home, because, well, he's in his 70s. Oh, that was Peter Brook calling it the Brake Magic Grand Prix. Because I think Hamilton might have adjusted the brake dials on his steering wheel before the restart at Baku, and then ended up overshooting the first turn. That's what I think you might be talking about. Peter Brook. I mean, the way he talks is all very stat by stat. It's like very dry. It's very. I mean, yeah, he'll throw a few jokes in there. Like, I think the joke I can remember most from Peter Brook was about how Jos Verstappen was, how he did his driver entry for all the drivers who competed in the 90s and the 2000s, where he ranked every driver from like last to first place. And then, of course, he made wife beater jokes about Jos Verstappen, about how he wrestled his car and he would beat the steering wheel and hook the apex. I knew what he was insinuating with the way he spoke, in that, yeah, how's this guy not been sent to prison for his behaviour? Like beating people about go-kart tracks. Oh, yeah, I mean, the thing with Peter Brooks is that, I don't know, I actually think those videos about HRT, Caterham and Marussia were not that interesting, to be honest, but I think all his other videos about the sports long history with like the Halo were all very interesting to watch. But not so much the backmarkers of recent times, because the backmarkers, I don't really understand why the likes of HRT, Caterham and Marussia really came into F1, to be honest. It was just, and it was a very cut and dry documentary. Like, you can't make any sort of funny jokes, and it's like, I think the only particularly important driver's career day launch was obviously Daniel Ricciardo at HRT. And if it wasn't for his tragic crash at Suzuka, then he probably would have launched Jules Bianchi's career at Russia, but of course, rest in peace. I mean, that's it. Like, there's not really much relevance they've got to modern F1 at all, apart from obviously Daniel Ricciardo. But Daniel Ricciardo was always going to end up driving for Toro Rosso anyway, because I think obviously with HRT struggling with Narain Kartikeyan's performance, Red Bull just paid HRT for one of their seats and said, yeah, let's get a bit of early seat time for Daniel Ricciardo so they can get up to speed with Formula One, so he can be like a future replacement for Mark Webber, which of course it happened in 2014. Why did he always speak the F? Oh, yeah, because he's taking a rip out of Tsunoda's swearing. That's why, yeah, understandably. Gotta say it, I do feel a bit sorry for Bottas, because I think having led the Formula 2 Championship and having won last year's Formula 3 season, I think obviously there's going to be a few angry Brazilian fans who will be annoyed if someone like Ricciardo gets a seat, but Bottas doesn't, whilst Colapinto actually gets a seat full time, because of course Colapinto has got to be one of the hottest names on the grid right now. 3 races in, he's rattled Alex Albon's cage. Oh yeah, I've also watched the best and worst races for every F1 driver. I can't remember what he said, but yeah. I think Peter Brooks is a solid enough YouTuber. Like, he does a lot of videos that his audience are interested in, which is, I think, the mark of every good YouTuber is to make sure that you provide engaging content that's always fresh. Although, of course, Peter Brooks is not really the type of person to be making loads of jokes like FP1 Will, or I don't know, Huckster, or Josh from Moaning Auctionman, or rocket-powered Mohawk. McLaren could have had a B team in Pro Drive. Oh yeah, I think Pro Drive would have definitely have been a better addition to Formula One. Like, I remember they had their entry turned down, but the FIA wanted to accept HRT's entry because they wanted to diversify the location of the teams. They wanted a team from Spain to enter the sport for some reason, but as we all know, HRT were pretty much the worst team in their 3 years in F1 and even failed to qualify for both opening Australian Grand Prix in 2011 and 2012. Best weather driver. I mean, Hamilton, Vettel were two fairly good wet weather drivers. I don't think Hamilton would probably win out there. Maybe, obviously, Jenson Button was fantastic in the wet, damp, and drying conditions when he was in F1. Surprisingly, Fernando Alonso has never won that many wet races despite having some good performances in the wet, but he's never actually had a lot of race wins there. But I think Jenson Button always stands out for me because of how much of an improvement his wet performances were compared to his dry weather performances, winning in Hungary twice, China twice, Australia once in 2010 when there was wet bit of rain on the track. I mean, Jenson Button was so good in like green track conditions. Always seemed to have that feel for the grip, like when there was very, very little residual drip on the track, but yet, like, even when you, like, the track surface has been washed out by rain, Jenson Button always found a way of actually finding grip when others would be struggling, slipping and sliding everywhere. Like, I know there's a story about Jenson Button at the 2000 American Grand Prix at Indy where Jenson forward the whole half of the field to pit early because Jenson was doing pretty well in drying conditions on the slick tyres, but all the other drivers tried to copy him, but yet they all spun off, went off the road because they didn't have the same car control as Jenson Button did. Nico Rosberg was not, well, he's definitely not a choice for best wet weather driver, though, because I don't know. Nico Rosberg just maximized his own talent, if you know what I mean. Like losing weight during 2016, making sure that he taking the seams out of his gloves to reduce car weight. That was what Rosberg was good at, like the analytical side of the sport, the technical side, rather than the pure outright driving side of the sport, if you understand what I mean. I mean, Schumacher is an obvious one. Senna's another obvious one. I know Adam Prost was actually notorious for trying to avoid racing in the wet as much as possible because obviously he witnessed Didier Pironi's career-ending accident at the 1982 German Grand Prix practice session where he broke both legs and never raced in F1 again. If Zach wanted to be petty, he could come up with a whole P-team saga, but yeah. I think the problem with having a B team is that it's only sustainable if you could go and buy another team's entry. And if you're going to start a new team all over again, then it's not really worth the expense. Rosberg, no, I remember Max Verstappen saving his car at Brazil, not Rosberg. Like, I think the thing with Rosberg, though, by that point, he was just driving to finish second. Like, after he won in Japan, like, he finished every other remaining race in the season in second place because he knew that was enough to win the championship. Alesi was a good weather driver, but of course he got infamously overtaken by Schumacher in the 1995 European Grand Prix. So, and the funny thing with Alesi is that he only ever won one race, and that was at Canada when Schumacher broke down. I know there was a race in Japan later on that year where Alesi was actually in contention to win, but then his car broke down. So, I mean, the thing with Alesi is that he never really came close to making most out of his driving talent. I think Barrichello was actually, for me, one of the best wet weather drivers. I've completely forgot about him because he won his first ever F1 race at Hockenheim in 2000 when half the track was wet, and he managed to hang on to onto the track despite the fact he stayed out on dry tyres whilst Hakkinen and Coulthard went and pitted and were closing him down towards the end. But yeah, I mean, Barrichello got second quite a few times in the wet, like Brazil in 96 for Jordan. I think he got a pole position at Spa-Francorchamps in 1994, where the whole track was absolutely drenched top to bottom, and obviously they had the chicane put at au rouge due to obviously the safety concerns the sport had at the time, be it Barrichello produced a lap out of nowhere. Yeah, Barrichello was actually, I think, one of the best weather drivers I've ever seen. I can't remember, but anyway, I don't know. What else was there? I'm trying to think. Barrichello. Oh yeah, he got podium at the 2008 British Grand Prix behind Hamilton and Heidfeld when he decided to pick the extreme wets at the correct moment. But I think I've lost count of how many great wet weather drives Barrichello had. It's just a shame that a lot of people just remember Rubens Barrichello as being Michael Schumacher's number 2, because I think obviously what happened at the 2002 Austrian Grand Prix is a bit of a blemish on Barrichello's reputation. Obviously, Kimi Räikkönen at Fuji 2007. The streets will never forget that day when Ferrari forgot to put the wet tyres on the cars at the start of the race, which meant Ferrari had to do a pit stop. When the cars were allowed to go for the safety car start, and Kimi and Massa dropped to last place. I can't remember everything that Barrichello's ever done, I'm afraid, so thank you for reminding me. Will Bottas be in Formula 1? The vote is divided. The vote is divided. I think obviously this video was supposed to be like a quick update on the whole Daniel Ricciardo situation, which of course I think we now know is official. He's not going to be racing for the rest of this season, and let's be really honest, I don't really see the point of Ricciardo making a comeback next year, because he's just so far past his best. It's not even funny at this point. Like, the last time I felt like Ricciardo was one of the undoubted best drivers on the grid was 2018. I know he was very good in 2020 when he was destroying Ocon, but that felt more like a circumstance of the pandemic, when obviously none of the other drivers could fully optimize their cars and their settings during that year due to the fact that obviously you'd have to spend a lot of time in quarantine to like take certain parts around the world so that you didn't spread the virus around. Hamilton, I mean, oh yeah, there was an incident where I think Hamilton was apparently put on the investigation post-race for some drivers believing that he was very erratic behind the safety car, where they, I think Mark Webber accused Hamilton of blocking him, and then because Hamilton blocked Webber, then Webber was forced to slow down dramatically, and Vettel had nowhere to go but to hit the back of Webber's Red Bull. And of course, that was the race where Alonso crashed out halfway through. I think I know Alonso fans already keep saying all the time they had damage on his car or something, but I mean, but I can't. But the problem with Alonso is that there's always seems to be this habit after 2006 of something going wrong at the worst moment that always seems to deny Alonso a chance of grabbing glory at the end of the season. And I have to say, it does seem to become a common trait in Alonso's career from that point onwards, I'm afraid. Oh yeah, Turkey was very good for Hamilton. Very good in the. I mean, obviously he managed to. I mean, I think he drove most of the race of intermediate tyres that worn away, but obviously Hamilton managed the grading so well compared to someone like Stroll, who changed tyres and decided to go on like slick tyres, but it didn't work at all. I can't remember that Fuji race. I only remember that race for where Kimi came from the back of the grid to the front. I think because of the amount of rain, there was like so many cars like driving around each other, like trying to avoid each other more than anything else, because it was impossible to see where they were going. Like, I think it's safe to say it's the sort of race you wouldn't see in modern F1 these days, because obviously there'd just be a massive red flag for like 2 or 3 hours. I think Webber was annoyed with Hamilton as well after the crash, like saying that he was getting slowed down too much because Hamilton had no idea how to control his safety car, the safety car conditions as race leader. Obviously, having no reference points other than the back of the safety car, and obviously the safety car being a lot slower than the actual F1 cars. Yeah, I think obviously this is a thing, like Bottas finished down in 14th, and I think some of Hamilton's driving talent in the rain definitely actually did come into play in the second half of Turkey on the drying conditions. Like, love him or hate him, like that was a day where I think Hamilton actually demonstrated a lot of his own driving talent, whilst obviously Max Verstappen was a bit erratic that day, where like he kept making all sorts of driving errors, getting a bit over desperate with some of his overtaking moves. Oh yeah, Webber also had food poisoning. I forgot about that. I know Red Bull said you can come in to stop if you want to, but Webber was like, no, I want to try and get a result. And he could have got a result, funnily enough, but thankfully, because of that crash with Vettel, that obviously promoted Kimi into third place, and that made a huge difference in Kimi becoming a champion and never being a world champion. So, no, sorry, this is not a music channel. I don't know what on earth you're talking about, but thank you for visiting Crystal Racing. I don't know about that. Like, I think there's probably like all the drivers around the grid have retired and probably done stuff to their hair outside of your sport, but they just don't tell us, and most people don't care about them anymore. I think you're probably only talking about this recent generation. Bortoletto. Oh. Yeah, obviously that crash definitely cost Hamilton the title, but that's not my problem. That's not my problem, I'm afraid. I know Hamilton fans love to talk about how he was 2 points away from being the rookie champion, but that McLaren was a clear rip-off of Ferrari's documents. Like Mike Coughlin walking to the Photoshop manager looks at the documents and realises, hang on a minute, some of this writing is in Italian. Grandi Ragazzi, Ferrari F2000-007. Oh, I think we've got a court case on our hands. Oh, and look at these emails that Pedro De La Rosa's been giving to everyone at Team Woking, to Fernando Alonso and Ron Dennis. It all looks a bit suspicious. Think of it, lack of experience as to why the crash happened. Yeah, I think obviously the safety, the Hamilton was a bit erratic behind the safety car. He was holding drivers up for far too long, and then, of course, Vettel just ran into the back of Webber because Hamilton was lucky to keep his win at Japan. That's all I'm going to say. And, yeah, I think the reason why he didn't get disqualified is because I think, I don't know, I really don't know. The way the FIA governed the sport around 2007, 2008 had to be some of the weirdest officiating I've ever seen. Wait, Felipe Massa made an appearance at Singapore last time out. That's a weird one, because of course we all know what happened to Massa in 2008 with his pit stop disaster. Oh no, I saw a photo of Felipe Massa walking past Nelson Piquet Jr. at last year's Miami Grand Prix, and of course Felipe Massa ignored him. Don't know, Felipe Massa is an odd character, if I'm going to be honest. Like, I've completely forgot. Like, I wonder how well Felipe Massa's court case over the 2008 season's been going. I have to say, I'm sorry. I think Felipe Massa really needs to move on. Like, I don't know why he pursued something like that, because I'm not a fan of having history books rewritten, even if obviously there was a lot of controversial behaviour by the world champions of the season. Toro Rosso, yeah, China 2007. Robert Kubica could have won the race, surprisingly enough, but thankfully for me, his car broke down a lap after taking the lead off Kimi. So, unlucky once again. Unlucky, but after all the bad luck Kimi suffered at McLaren, I think everything going in Kimi's favour in the second half of the year was kind of justice served for Kimi, because let's be real here, folks. Like, whatever you think of Kimi Räikkönen, he definitely deserved at least one World Championship win for all the headaches he caused the likes of Schumacher, Montoya, and Alonso over the years. Like, yeah, he might have not have been a better driver than Schumacher and Alonso over the course of his own career, but he definitely did enough to at least one or two championships to his own name. And of course, he's definitely got a status way above Daniel Ricciardo, who will always belong in what Say would describe as the Hall of Very Good, which is a very interesting name, because obviously that puts him in the same frame as someone like David Coulthard and Barrichello, and I don't know, maybe James Hunt and Jody Scheckter. Toro Rosso could have finished 6th in 2007. That's interesting, because I think the back end of the field was very tight in terms of the constructors' battle. I think Red Bull finished 5th with only about 20 points or something. Like, I think it was such a top-heavy season in 2007, where obviously Ferrari and McLaren won all the races between them. And obviously, BMW Sauber only collected a couple of podiums here and there between, all of them going to Nick Heidfeld, which was weird. And those two, Nick Heidfeld and Kubica, finished in a very lonely 5th and 6th. I don't know, mate. That's a bit of a big... I'm not really sure what to say about Kimi Räikkönen maybe not returning to Ferrari had Kubica never crashed, because of course you have to realise Alonso's relationships with Ferrari was on the rocks after 2012, because I think Alonso was getting very sick and tired of Ferrari's issues and the problems they had, and for all we know, Ferrari might have decided to release Alonso a year earlier than they did. 24 points. Thank you for reminding me. Yeah, I did a bit of research in terms of like who was the worst performing team to finish 6th in the constructors' title. I'm trying to think. Obviously, Ferrari won first, BMW second in 2007, third were Renault, fourth were Red Bull, who only had 24 points, fifth were, my God, no, Williams. How many points did Williams score? Was it 27? I think Williams took 4th, wasn't he? Oh, yeah, Toyota finished 6th with just 13. So, yeah, Williams were 4th. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, that was such a weird season. Like, Williams did get a podium with Alex Wurz at Canada. Red Bull got a podium with Mark Webber at Nürburgring, and Toyota got nothing. And Ralf Schumacher ended up leaving the sport afterwards because Ralf Schumacher was clearly really had fallen out of love with Formula One after what happened to him in 2003 with his crashes crashing out in a testing session at Monza, which left him with concussion. Then a year later, he had a crash at Indy where he broke vertebrae in his back. And he only found out he had broken bones in his back when he flew back to Austria. So he was very unhappy about the medical care he received from the sport when he had his crash at Indianapolis. Renault, yeah, I know Renault finished 3rd because obviously Kovalainen took his first podium at the same race in Fuji. I don't know. Did Renault get any other podiums that year? I think bizarrely enough, I don't know. I don't think Fisichella got a podium. They managed to get 3rd with just one podium, surprisingly enough, but they were probably the most consistent midfield team outside of BMW Sauber. And I think I remember Kovalainen had actually won the teammate battle that year. So yeah, I mean, Kovalainen was actually pretty decent in his debut year at Renault, but then of course he had all sorts of shenanigans when he went to McLaren. So I mean, I don't really know where I'm going with this stream at this point because I think I'm just rambling on the past. Like, I didn't expect this to turn into a rant about 2007 or anything else. Like, I think obviously Say Regara started talking about the best wet weather drivers, so this is what it's ended up turning into. So, yeah, Christian Albers, how the streets will never forget. Absolutely bonkers incident when he had his fuel rig still attached to the car when he came out of the pits. And of course, after Silverstone, he got sacked because Spiker needed Yamamoto's money. Yamamoto, like, well, I mean, where did he come from? Like, just so random. 46 podiums out of 51. Yeah, I mean, I know people have moaned about Formula One not being competitive in recent times, but 2007, like, the only reason why it was watchable because of the driver championship fight between Kimi, Alonso, and Hamilton. Like, had one of those drivers ran away with the championship, I think it would have been gone down as pretty much just as boring as quite a lot of other seasons, if I'm going to be honest. But, you know, Hamilton stole the headlines for his performances with 9 podiums in his first 9 races. Like, obviously, he had at least 2 years worth of testing behind him, so he was one of the best prepared rookies in F1 history. But to get 9 podiums in your first 9 Grand Prix is nothing to be sniffed at. 2000, I don't know, I wasn't really a fan of 2006, to be honest. Like, I know we had Jenson Button's win at Hungary, followed up by Felipe Massa's win at Turkey, but I did feel like a lot of 2006 before the Hungarian Grand Prix was actually a bit dull to watch, to be honest, because it just felt like this quite rudimentary back and forth between Schumacher and Alonso in that, you know, Michelin and Renault had a better package on one track. Then Ferrari and Bridgestone had a better package at the other track, and it just felt like they were winning according to whoever had the fastest car at whatever weekend. I know Australia was an exciting race with obviously Schumacher crashing, Liozzi crashing, Montoya spinning on the way to the grid, and of course Ralf Schumacher picking up his final podium beyond Alonso and Kimi. I don't know, 2006 was just really a bit of a mixed bag, and I think the way that obviously the mechanical issues Schumacher had in the last 2 races kind of ruined the spectacle for me in a sense. I know 2007 was not a year known for great racing, but I think the storyline around it, away from the racetrack, kept it exciting. And you have to realise Kimi did come from 26 points behind after the Indianapolis Grand Prix to win the championship, and he was 17 points behind with just 2 races to go. So whilst there wasn't as many great overtakes in that year's championship compared to the previous year, I mean, the storyline was pretty intriguing, to be honest. Oh yeah, Kimi had a great comeback drive at Bahrain in 2006 where he qualified 22nd because his suspension broke late on after first time the sport ever did the elimination qualifying format as we know it, and McLaren and Kimi gambled way too late. Great comeback drive, and of course Nico Rosberg set the fastest lap on his own comeback drive. But I will say, I do remember watching Imola and Nürburgring back then. I was just so very kind of bored by those races. Like, I think Jacques Villeneuve spent the second half of the European Grand Prix holding people up in his BMW Sauber, and I think all I remember was Jake Carter Fisichella being held up in qualifying the day before, and they had a massive argument. It was just sort of a bit, just felt like another race. 2 different tyre manufacturers, yeah, it could be fun at times, but I do think it did sort of, I think the sport began to lean too heavily in favour of whichever tyre manufacturers had an advantage at any given time. Like, I think towards the end of 2003, it did cause Bridgestone and Ferrari to submit a complaint about Michelin's tyres, which was pretty outer kilter for me because obviously there was nothing in the rules that said that the front tyres needed to be of a certain diameter at the end of the race, but Ferrari being Ferrari and the amount of political power they had with Braun and John Todd and Schumacher and Bridgestone just made they ended up winning their protest, which left a bit of taste in my mouth, to be honest. And I have to say, when they switched to a single tyre manufacturer for 2007, I have to say I was actually a fan of it because I was like, I've had enough of listening to this sort of politics between Michelin and Bridgestone. It just wasn't my thing. 2021, yeah, but I think obviously the Schumacher Hamilton versus Verstappen battle made that very intriguing. Oh yeah, well, you've also got to remember, I do remember watching the 2005 American Grand Prix. That literally made my own mind up on the whole tyre manufacturer battle. I was like, yeah, just let Michelin go now because I've had enough of them. Like, I don't really like it because the problem with tyre manufacturers is that they're always going to bitch and complain about, oh, that tyre manufacturer did this and they're favouring us. Oh, no, they're favouring them and we're getting cheated. It's all so annoying. So annoying. Like, oh my God. I mean, of course, I remember Yoda truly got pole position for Indy 2005, but of course, he did that on bare fumes. Like, his car was probably underweight in qualifying, so they probably were like, and then, of course, he parked up with all the other Michelin runners the next day, so it all came to naught. I don't know, mate. I mean, for me, the best season I think I've ever watched was actually 2003, when, of course, for Raw, when Kimi made his breakthrough with Alonso and VCARB. I thought that was pretty fun to watch, but of course, I was very young back then. Yeah, I mean, cheers, yeah. 2010 was actually my choice for the second best season of all the seasons I've ever watched, with the four-way battle going into Abu Dhabi. But of course, I think I will say that watching Mark Webber bottle it at Valencia career ruined it quite badly because I think he would have just about deserved a championship had he finished almost every race. I mean, we had 8 race winners in 16 races in 2003. I think that was a pretty fair bet for a good season. Only one thing that I don't like about 2003 is what happened at the Nürburgring. 2012 was okay. I mean, that was a bit of an odd season. It started off fantastically well in the first 7 races with 7 different winners in the first opening 7 races. Maldonado, top step of the podium at Catalonia, how can we forget? But I think after Valencia, when Alonso won the race, and Webber won at Silverstone, I think the season lost a bit of its sparkle when it became very clear that Vettel and Alonso were going to end up having a 2-way fight and everyone fell behind. Yeah, I think Vettel obviously really should have steamrolled his way to the 2010 title, but Vettel did get involved in a couple of daft incidents, like running into the side of Webber just his overtaking technique was so bad at Turkey. Like, it really was like a massive rookie error on Vettel's part. And then, of course, he went and smashed into the side pod of Button at Spa. Like, a couple of rookie errors did kind of ruin Vettel's run. And, of course, he had brake issues at Bahrain, brake issues again in Australia. So, I mean, he should have won that title by a country mile, to be honest. Like, had it not been for those issues, I think he would have won the title by like 60 or 70 points easily. And I think because of that actually made Vettel's issues made 2010 really exciting, along with Webber performing out of his skin in what was, I think, probably the best Red Bull car Red Bull had, because obviously Webber was actually competitive that year compared to where he was in 2011 or 2013. Although I think by the end of 2013, Mark Webber had completely checked out of F1, and obviously Mark Webber was not a fan of the Pirelli tyres. But that's what made 2010 so exciting. Like, the best seasons are the ones where no one can maintain any run of form, like we're seeing with this year in 2024, we've got Norris bottling race wins here and there, Red Bull struggling with their car, Leclerc and Mercedes picking up a few wins here and there. Like, the variety does add to the spectacle. Like, and I will defend Norris a little bit in the sense that at the start of this year, I don't think any of us expected McLaren to be in a championship fight whatsoever. Like, I think most of us thought they would only win like 2 or 3 races at most, but and I think you have to realise, I think they've beaten their own expectations in terms of how much closer they are to being a top team again, fighting for championships. But of course, it's kind of a mixed bag for Norris because I think he doesn't have that much experience in terms of fighting in the front like Verstappen, Leclerc, Hamilton, Alonso does, hence why he's making a few mistakes like damaging his front wing at the last race at Singapore towards the end, which was a bit silly, but he's got to learn from that. Alonso 2010 Monaco. I mean, I don't know what you're saying there. Like, I think Mark Webber won the race. Oh, yeah, Michael Schumacher undertook a bunch of cars under the safety car the last lap. And he got given a time penalty and got dropped out of the points. Yeah, that was a very interesting incident. And I think Mark Schumacher and Mercedes were very annoyed about that penalty, saying that I think, when Schumacher came back, I know there was also another penalty for what he did at Hungary against Barrichello. And I think being an elder statesman, I think the sport just wanted to make an example out of him at that point because obviously, like, he was no longer a championship contender. So, and as for Hamilton, well, I mean, Hamilton made a couple of rookie errors which actually costed him any chance of becoming a champion. So, that's a shame. That's a shame, but obviously, I think those mistakes made Hamilton a better driver, to be honest. Oh, Alonso started from the pit lane. I totally forgot about that. Like, I just forgot, to be honest. Like, I remember Schumacher starting at the back of the grid 4 years previously for parking his car in qualifying, which was hilarious. And everyone in the paddock gripped him a new a-hole for that. Yeah, but the thing is, Hamilton could be a bit silly at times when he used to drive for McLaren, to be honest. I think he was a bit overzealous, but, every young driver learns their lessons, has to learn their lesson at some point. I mean, yeah, I think it's time for me to end the stream because my voice is really sort of hurting now because I've now done about 6 streams in 6 days. I mean, this has got to be some sort of record because I think the last time I did this many streams was probably the Euro 2024 tournament. Was basically doing 2 streams a day for all the matches that were taking place. Fair enough, fair enough. I mean, I wouldn't say this season has been super amazing, but it is an improvement on the last 2 seasons. Like, let's be honest. The last 2 seasons have been really sort of a bit worrying, like giving me a bit of a Mercedes 2014 to 2020 vibe. And I'm kind of glad we're seeing the sport improve a little bit since then. I mean, it's still better than what we had to experience last year with Verstappen winning 19 times. Like, come on, that got really boring to watch. Yeah, first half of 2022, I was going to say, yeah, that was good, but problem is you can't trust Ferrari to sustain a championship challenge at all. You just can't trust them at all. That's why I didn't get my hopes up for that season, I'm afraid. Not because I didn't think Leclerc was not good enough, but it was because I knew Ferrari would screw it up some way or another. I mean, I remember 2002 was dead boring to watch. Like, I mean, Schumacher was on the podium in every race. All 17 races, and it was just like, I could remember it was the first time I started watching F1, and I thought, oh my god, no, what have I done? Like, please, 2003, please be a good year. Otherwise, I'm going to have to stop watching this sport because I cannot, like, justify spending once every Saturday afternoon or once every fortnight watching this sport because obviously my parents were not that impressed by me becoming interested in Formula One at the time. Finally, an F1 viewer. Yes, hello there, Super Trooper 05. I hope you're doing well this evening. Yeah, Mark, Daniel Ricciardo has left RB officially, and Liam Lawson will be filling in till the end of the season. Ricciardo has not announced his retirement from Formula One, but let's be honest, is there any point of Ricciardo trying to come back to F1 for next year? Yeah, Liam deserves it. I don't know why Ricciardo has persisted as long as he's done because he keeps talking about doing all this stuff in IndyCar, WEC, and NASCAR, but he's not done it, which is so weird. Ferrari just had a weird 2003, like, car worked well at cooler tracks, and then at a hotter race tracks like France, Nürburgring, and Hungary, the Bridgestone tyres going to cope. Such a weird year, and I think obviously with Michelin having, with more teams wanting Michelin to work with them, I think Bridgestone kind of started to run out with other teams to find feedback from. Like, I think towards 2004 and 5, I think they only had like Sauber, Jordan, and Minardi to take extra data from. Do I think Oscar could become a world champion? This is a really hard question because I'm still not sure. Like, I know we showed promise at Hungary and Baku last time out, but he needs to improve his qualifying before if he wants to become a serious contender to become a world champion, because I think his qualifying does let him down quite badly. And in this day and age, like, if you don't qualify well, then you really are going to struggle to stay in a championship fight, I'm afraid. Unless it's like a really competitive season like 2010 or 2012 when Alonso was almost within a few points of beating Vettel for the championship. But maybe, but I do feel like Oscar still needs to improve in a few ways in order to really convince me that he's definitely world champion material. He's a good driver. I mean, I have been impressed by his performances, but it's still early days. And of course, I think Piastri did get a sprint race pole, but I mean, does sprint race really count? I'm not sure. I don't know. We have to remember he did win the sprint race at Qatar last year, but sprint races are a different kettle of fish. I don't know, but I mean, this is the thing. Like, Jenson Button and Nico Rosberg were late bloomers. Like, I know early on in Jenson Button's career, I didn't rate Jenson Button at all. Like, if you ask me, Jenson Button, like, if Jenson Button was world champion material after his first 2 or 3 years in F1, I would have just, like, I literally kept saying no. I was like, yeah, he's okay, but he's nowhere near as good as someone like Mark Webber or Montoya. Like, I was convinced in the right car, the right team, that Montoya and Webber would have more chance of becoming a world champion, and I was completely wrong. So I don't know. But you know, I didn't rate Felipe Massa either, and he came within a point of becoming a champion. Like, I thought he was pure garbage after his first 2 years at Sauber, where he was getting involved in all sorts of shenanigans in the early 2000s for Sauber. Bourne was the expert of maximising his car in the midfield. Like, Bottas was so good in the midfield car, and I think the rule changes of 2009 with the downforce, the wings being decreased, and obviously refueling being banned for 2010, DRS coming in for 2011, and Pirelli tyres coming in, I think helped Jenson Button out as he got older, because it became more about saving your car, saving your tyres, saving your fuel, which was more of a Jensen Button style of way of driving. And obviously, I think the rule changes allowed Jensen Button to become one of the better drivers on the grid, because Jensen Button was never about full out speed like a young Kimi Räikkönen or like, I don't know, Montoya in the early 2000s. Like, it was a very different driving style he had to a lot of other top drivers. Thing with Leicester City, I think, is that because of the way they won the Premier League, in that they just played all their best players and they just had like a brilliant counter-attacking system. Like, all the top teams like Man City and Arsenal have found a way of combating that style by like trying to maximize possession of the ball, like 75% possession, so that the smaller teams have far fewer chances of scoring goals like they could do back in 2016. 2011, yeah, Jensen Button was at his best in 2011. Like, he was superb, and he drove better that year than he did in 2009, which is weird to say, but then again, of course, I am of the opinion that Kimi Räikkönen was better in 2005 than he was in 2007. So, you know, swings and roundabouts. I mean, sometimes the seasons where you finish runners up, you might do better in those seasons than when you actually win a world championship, because I think Keke Rosberg had a good 1985 compared to his 1982, where, I mean, Rosberg did a good job of outpacing his younger teammate Nigel Mansell. Was in 1982, obviously, Jules died, Pironi smashed his legs, and of course, Keke Rosberg had Derek Bailey as a teammate who wasn't any good at all. I mean, obviously, Jensen, yeah, he won at Japan, Hungary, and I think he won at Canada. Canada was a good drive, even though he did collide with Alonso and Hamilton, though. Who is the best driver regardless of generation? I've always had this between when Manuel Fangio from Argentina in the 1950s, and of course Francis Alain Prost, who used to drive for McLaren, Ferrari, Williams, and Renault in his F1 career. Like, I mean, Alain Prost, had he had better luck, could have been a 7 or 8 time world champion. Like, I think he was only a few points off winning in 1981, 3-4 points behind away from beating Piquet in 1983, 1 point away from beating Lauda in 1984, where of course he was only given half points at Monaco. Because of the silly drop points rule in 1988, he lost the title to Senna, even though he scored more points than Senna by about 10 or 11 points. I think, yeah, he could have had 7 or 8 championships, funny enough. I mean, you have to realise Prost actually outscored Senna in both of his seasons they had together at McLaren, so even though Senna was much quicker, Prost finished races more regularly and was a lot more careful with his equipment. But of course, I have to say, I'm not sure Prost's driving style would deliver dividends in modern F1 like it did in the 80s. Yeah, I think obviously Reutemann was only a point off, but I think, I can't remember, Prost was probably like 10 points behind PK that year, but obviously Renault were notorious for turbo engine failures back in the 80s, which is why Renault never won a driver's or a constructor's title, despite having had what was on quite a few occasions the fastest car on the grid. And weirdly, despite obviously Ferrari losing Jules and Pironi in 1982, they won the Constructors' Championship, and despite having Tambay and Arnoux as a partnership the following year, they also successfully defended the Constructors' crown, despite the fact they also missed out on the Drivers' Championship for a second year running, weirdly. So that was a weird time for Formula One, a weird but very dangerous time for the sport. 1990, I don't know. I mean, that's a weird season, isn't it? I think Senna had a Honda engine that was more powerful, but Prost had a better handling car. But I think Senna just about edged Prost that year, and of course Senna did went and cynically smashed Prost out at Suzuka the first lap, so pretty unnecessary, but I think Senna was just so resentful for what happened the year before when they were teammates, so 982, I think, I don't know, how many points, I think that's a weird one, 1982, because I think Renault just had far too many mechanical failures. So it's like that was a year that was defined by big crashes, engine failures, crashes. So it was like that became a bingo run that year. And unfortunately, a couple of drivers lost their lives. Hulkenberg podium at Audi. Oh, good question. I think I'm going to have to answer that question on another stream because unfortunately, Sauber are a total mess. Sauber are a mess. I really wish Hulkenberg could end his career with a podium, but I get the feeling Hulkenberg knows that his career is going to come to an end in about 2 or 3 years' time. So, and obviously Audi have put a huge stash of cash in front of him, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna have a cash grab before I retire." So, probably not. I'm afraid. Unfortunately, I think Hulkenberg is going to go down in history as the driver with by far the most podiums. He's probably going to end up with like 200 starts without a podium because I don't see how whether Audi could save Sauber from their problems in the next 2 or 3 years. And I don't think the likes of Red Bull, Ferrari, Mercedes can be pushed, and McLaren can be pushed off the top so easily. Even with the 2026 rule changes. Are you the same guy who said that I was a member of Squid Games? Because, dude, I'm deleting your comment. I'm not interested. Poor old Bossanetto, he's not very popular in the vote, I'm afraid. He's probably going to win the Formula 2 championship, but just like Pocher and Djokovic, he's probably going to miss out again. So there's going to be a third consecutive year of a Formula 2 driver not getting a seat the following season in Formula 1, which is pretty hilarious because I think a lot of people have come up with conclusions that Formula 2 is not worth its grain and salt anymore. Like, Behrman and Antonelli are probably going to finish like 8th and 13th in the championship, but they're going to be in F1 next year, so what a waste of time, eh? I mean, Red Bull, is it going to be hard for 2026? They've got Ford engines coming up for 2026, so, I mean, they can't really get out of the deal now, can they? I mean, Honda are going to Aston Martin for 2026, so that deal is coming to an end. So Red Bull are just going to have to make do with what they've got with Ford in 26. They will no longer have Adrian Newey. Jonathan Wheatley is gone. Will Courtney's gone. Hannah Schmidt is rumoured to be leaving. Max Verstappen is rumoured to be interested in moving to Mercedes for 2026, and I apologise for the connection breaking off there. I hope no one had any issues there, but I don't think Red Bull will win the championship in 2026. I think all good things come to an end, I'm afraid. Oh my god. Okay, I think it might be time for your bedtime, Sagara. I don't want you mentioning that guy's name on my channel. Thank you very much. Let's not talk about that character because this is not the time and place to talk. Very, very dodgy characters you're now mentioning, like. I'm sorry I had to delete that message. But you know how to make me laugh. I know that, but yeah, like I don't want people to start getting distracted by things I don't want to talk about, because if I start talking about them, we know YouTube has a very strict policy when you start talking about certain celebrities or under investigation for serious crime, because yeah, it is a serious crime, and as much as I want to laugh, it's not actually a laughing matter. It really is not, but because it's because of who you are, I can't help but laugh. Oh dear. And yeah, thankfully we are not in the hip hop business. We do not do that sort of dodgy stuff around here. I do know a few years back, Flavio Briatore and Nico Rosberg had their names mentioned in the Panama Papers, which was a huge eye opener. But I mean, I suppose if someone gets, I mean, I know Lewis Hamilton used to be a close fan of Sean Coombs, so maybe there could be a twist in the tail there. Do I think, I don't know, you gotta finish your sentence, mate. I don't know what you're talking about. Do you think sim racers can get into professional racing? Well, I know there's been like a few sim racers that have made a step up to Formula 2, like that Turkish kid, but I know Jan Moldenbrod made a step up from sim racing to like junior Formula racing back in 2011, and I think he, had a few good years in Formula 3 in Japan, and I think he also used to race for Nissan Sports Cars team, which was, I think he got paid a fair bit of money for doing it, but he was never like a serious F1 prospect despite his efforts. And he made his and he was 20 years old when he started his junior Formula career. But I have to say, in this day and age, I think they would prefer to have select drivers who enter the junior ranks when they're at least 15 years old these days. So, I mean, it depends how young you are. Like, unfortunately, I think you're gonna have to be quite young. Like, I think if you start your junior career like beyond the age of 18, and then I think I don't think you have any serious chance of making it into anywhere near close Formula One, depending on what you want to do. I suppose if you want to become a sports car driver or a touring car driver, maybe yes, but it depends what you want to do, to be honest, because obviously if you want to make it to F1, then really, like, I think even Nicholas Latifi started his karting career when he was 13 years old, so yeah, it's always best to start earlier than later. I think Damon Hill is probably going to be like it's a unique case of someone who started racing when he was 24 years old, but that was back in 1985 now. So, yeah, I mean, unfortunately, it's not the 80s, and it's not like or the early 90s anymore, where like the cars are a lot more basic technical matters, and all it was like a steering wheel and a gear lever beside them. Quizmaster, oh my goodness me, hot topic, isn't it? Hot topic, that character. I think we're now approaching 2 hours, and I think I think I've pretty much stretched this stream out to the absolute maximum. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you again next time.